I got 9 a.m. We will start Friday, July 12th, Truckee River Flood Management Authority meeting with a roll call. Sorry.
Donald Abbott.
Here.
Alexis Hill. Ed Lawson.
Here.
Naomi Dewar. Naomi is on Zoom, but I don't hear her.
On mute.
Clara Andriola.
Present.
Miguel Martinez.
Also on Zoom.
Miguel is also on Zoom, so for the record.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We have a quorum, so we'll do Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Andriola, will you lead us?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Barely.
It's Alexis.
Oh, we hear you, Alexis. Ish.
We cannot hear you and the Sparks.
Okay.
In the room?
Yeah.
You can't hear this.
Now we can.
Yeah, we had our mics off.
So we're good? You guys can hear us?
For a moment.
Perfect. I see 2 people in the waiting room too, Mr. Bedard and Ian. Perfect. Public comment.
Mr. Chair, if I could make the
We
statement.
cannot hear in the Sparks boardroom.
If we talk right into the mic, can you hear us?
Hello.
That's good. Okay, let me get the SOSU TV people.
Can you hear this, Mike? No.
Are you going to IT? Oh, okay.
Messages right there. I can choose some messages.
Oh, Don and ask.
Good.
All right, can anybody on Zoom hear me?
I can. It's Alexis.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Perfect.
Yeah, we can
Thank
hear you now.
Yay!
Awesome.
Very good.
They turn up their volume.
Perfect. We'll continue on public comment. Mr. Walls.
Those who wish to make a public comment by telephone may do so by calling 1-253-215-8782 and using access code 861-1853-2620. If you are unable to access the meeting with that number, please call Michael Walls at 775-813-1662. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
I have not received any public comment.
And I don't see anyone in the room. Well, I see people in the room.
Mr. Chair?
So- Yeah, Miss Diller.
Do you want to do a roll call again? Because I don't think we heard you the first time.
Yeah, we can do that if you, that's
No
fine.
problem. Donald Abbott,
Here.
Alexis Hill,
Here.
Ed Lawson,
Here.
Naomi Dewar,
Here.
Clara Andriola,
Present.
Miguel Martinez.
Here.
Perfect.
We did recognize that you guys were on Zoom, just, it made sense.
Yeah.
So, all good. So I don't see any public comment. We'll go to item C, approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion.
Move to approve?
Motion by Mr. Lawson,
Second.
second by Ms. Andriola. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Passes unanimously. Item D, announcements and clippings. Mr. Robeson.
Yes, first announcement is that we have started to execute the agreement with the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. We are working on a date for a ceremony still. We also got them the initial check out to the tribal chair last week, or earlier this week. And we are also outreaching to the Army Corps of Engineers about this new development and what it means for permitting. And we are waiting for the letter from the tribe either supporting or stating no opposition to the Vista Narrows project. So that is moving along as expected now that this has been done. The other thing that we have is Green Vibe is having a cleanup day tomorrow. And they have been doing a lot of work out there over the last couple of weeks. And honestly, the grounds are in better shape than since any time I've been the director. So it's really nice to see the area cleaned up and, you know, especially near the river and everything without having a bunch of trash everywhere. So that's really good. Also, we are participating in bridge design work for 3 major bridges in Reno. All of those are going well, and from our perspective, the hydraulics part of it, they are doing everything they're supposed to be doing. And finally, we are making progress already on Rock McCarran. We're going to have a major meeting on alternatives later this month, and we will probably have some public participation meetings later this fall on the Rock McCarran project. That's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Robeson? I don't hear or see any. We'll move on to
Mr.
our.
Chair, I had a question.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see your hand up,
Yeah,
Mr.
that's okay. Yeah, George, when, you said later this month, but we're halfway through July. So when are you planning to have the outreach, did you say, for Miller McCarran?
The outreach will probably be in the fall. There is a
the
meeting.
fall.
There is a major meeting this month with the full team working on the alternatives analysis.
So who is the full team? Like, do you mean the consultants?
Yeah, the consultants and some of the people over, like myself, looking over the consultants.
Right, but I mean, would this meeting include like the city and county staff, or would this, I got confused because you said we'll have a major outreach meeting later this month,
No, I said in the fall.
in the fall. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions or comments? Perfect. I don't see any. We'll move on to consent agenda. Looking for a motion for 2A, 2B, 2C.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Andriola. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Lawson. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 3, presentation and discussion of the status of the Wadsworth Pedestrian Bridge Replacement Project, including, including an update on public outreach efforts and plans to solicit bids for its construction. Possible action to authorize staff to solicit bids for the construction of the Wadsworth Pedestrian Bridge Replacement Project. Mr. Robeson.
Yes, so we, last time in April, approved the final design and the use of JUB engineers as our consultant to do a lot of the engineering supervision work for the construction of the bridge. However, we did not say, let's go ahead and go out to bid now. We wanted to do a public outreach meeting and there was a couple of questions regarding permitting that needed to be resolved. So since that intervening time in April, the permitting questions have been resolved, and we had a very, in my mind, a very successful public outreach meeting. We had about 30 people. It was on May 30th. There was a lot of tribal representation at this meeting, and there was great comments. There was some it didn't really, it was very positive, but there were a couple of things like we didn't know, for instance, that the bridge was heavily used by school children during the school year. So we want to make sure the construction does not occur during the school year. For instance, that was one of them. And then we didn't realize the bridge was lighted, so we're adding lighting to the bridge. So a couple of things like that were very good comments. And so with that, with the public outreach, the positivity of it, and with the permitting things, the permitting issues at hand, I believe it's time to go ahead and authorize us to go out to bid and work with a bidding agency on this project. One other quick thing is we do need to work with the county because it is a county facility, and we need to work with them because we want it to be a county facility when we're all done with it again. And right now it's in a very poor state, and when it's done, it's going to be a brand new bridge, but still there's going to be, somebody has to watch over that bridge and take ownership of it, and that would be the county. So we'll be working with them as well to make sure that we have that in line as we go along in this project.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions or comments from Mr. Robeson? Anyone has a hand up? I don't see it. Perfect. Mr. Lawson?
So I'm assuming you want a motion.
Yes, we would like to have authorization to go ahead and go out to bid.
So I'm going to move to authorize the solicit bids for the Wadsworth Bridge replacement.
I'll second.
Public comment.
Yeah. We have a motion and a second. Is there any public comment?
I'm not seeing any.
I don't see any in person either. Then we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Awesome. Item 4, discussion and possible action to authorize TURFMA staff to rely on the State of Nevada Division of Public Works list of qualified bidders pursuant to NRS 338-1382 to determine whether a person or entity is a qualified bidder for TURFMA Public Works projects. Mr. Walls.
Thank you very much. This is a bit of a housekeeping item that kind of goes along with the bid on the bridge. Since we'll be soliciting bids for that bridge, and we hopefully will be soliciting for other projects here in the near future, Nevada law requires that each advertisement for bid includes provision requiring a contractor to be qualified. The law has a couple of systems for qualifying bidders. One of those is that a public entity such as TRFMA can rely on the division, the Nevada State Public Works Division's list of qualified bidders. That's found in NRS 338-1382. That's kind of how I think most entities approach that. We've never taken the formal step of receiving authorization from the board to do so, and that's our request today, is that you authorize us to rely on the Nevada State Public Works list of qualified bidders in soliciting bids and qualifying bidders.
Question? Since Mr. Walls, any questions or comments, Mr. Walls?
I'm not seeing any.
I don't see any. We're looking for a motion. Mr. Lawson?
We're going to move to have qualified bidders pursuant to NRS 338-132. 1382, sorry.
Perfect.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. I know Marty said there's no public comment. I'll call for public comment just to be double sure on Zoom. Don't see any. Then we have a motion and a second. Please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 5, presentation discussion regarding the addition of a hydraulic technician position to the TURFMA organizational chart, the job duties of the hydrologic technician, and activation of that position. Possible action to approve the proposed changes to the TURFMA organizational chart and authorize the executive director to hire the hydrologic technical position. Mr. Robeson.
Yes, so this is a kind of a housekeeping or a rebalancing of our agency. In 2018, our senior hydrogeologist retired, and he did a lot of our work on what we call our gauging warning system for flooding. And so we have a lot of precipitation gauges that we work with, and I believe we've given some presentations on the scope of it and how many there are and things like that earlier, but there's several of these. These have to be maintained. And currently, the person that retired, we have retained on a retired contract to help us with that. And we've also been using one of our staff, Danielle Henderson, who's a natural resource manager, to do a lot of this. Really, it's basic work that you want to have a technician doing. So what we're trying to do is get a person in there to get trained and get up to speed. So when Ed Evans, who was the former senior hydrogeologist, really does say, I'm just out, I want to just work on my ranch and do hay all the time. When he does it, and he's almost there now, but when he does say that, we want to be able to maintain that network. In addition, we're giving this person some additional duties, which is data reduction and working with our GIS and modeling outputs so that we have somebody in office that can ask to take on all the requests and everything else. Currently, I do all that. I do the data reduction. I look at the models. I give modeling output. I give GIS coverages and all that because we just don't have staff that can do that right now. I want to train this position to be able to do that. So this person will help relieve myself of some duties and relieve Danielle Henderson of some duties because our duties are getting more intense with these new contracts we're putting together, like for Rock McCarran, hopefully Vista Narrows in the next 7 or 8 months, as well as the Wadsworth Bridge. So because our workload is increasing in these other areas, we want to offload that to the appropriate staff level. So that's what the purpose of this is. I don't know if you can do this, Marty, but if you could show page 57, there's the organizational chart. Oh, no, that's not it. There it is. Okay, if you could blow into that a little bit so that they can see it a little bit better. So right now, and you can pick one of the charts, not kind of both of them at the same time. It's okay. Okay, right there. Okay, so what you can see now is, like I said, we have this list of consultants and contractors and monitoring. We have a budgeted contract for monitoring for this year still with Ed Evans. We actually have another one as well, but the point is we have a person on, but it's a person who has been retired now for 5 years, and I'm not sure how much longer he's going to want to do this. And I want to get this kind of a data dump or the ability to give the institutional memory of where these gauges are, what the quirks are with each gauge and everything else to this hydrologic tech. So it also kind of rebalances the agency some to give a kind of a lower level person that just has their head down doing a lot of work. And we need that right now as an agency because our workload is increasing. So that's the justification for it. This is what we look like moving forward with the hydrologic tech. We would have 6 total staff. And it would be a kind of an entry-level position where we're training a young person, probably a young person, we don't know that for sure, but somebody perhaps earlier in their career to do a lot of these tasks. So that's the idea behind the position. I'd be happy to answer any questions about it if anybody has any.
Mr. Robeson, Mr. Lawson?
What's the budget for this staff member?
According to the county, they're budgeting this at $72,000 a year for the actual wages. And then when you add in the, all the benefits and everything else, it comes out to a little over $100,000 per year. And for this year, it'd be lesser because by the time we hire the person, we're going to be into the fiscal year a few months.
What's the qualifications for this person?
This person should either have a bachelor's degree in watershed management or hydrology, or they could have a degree in what's called hydrography with some experience. So it needs to be somebody that's familiar with gauging and familiar with GIS and modeling outputs, like from watershed models or hydraulic models.
So is this a competitive wage for the market?
I believe it is if we're hiring somebody that's young in their career. It is not for somebody that's experienced.
Thank you.
If there's any questions or comments on Zoom, I can't see you, so just go ahead. Nope.
I don't see anybody.
Okay. Then I don't see any other questions or comments. I'm looking for a motion, I believe, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to accept the proposal staff change that adds the hydrological technician to the TRFMA organization chart and authorizes the TRFMA staff to hire for this position.
Motion by Ms.
I'll
Andrew.
second.
Oh, yeah, second. Second by Ms. Stewart. We'll open it up for public comment.
I want to make
Oh.
a comment.
Go for Ms. We'll bring it back to us, Ms. Stewart.
Okay, I want to thank George for being proactive on this. I had a chance to work with, Ed Evans, and he did a fantastic job. He actually started at the county and transitioned over to the flood. And I really think it's important to do this kind of succession planning. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ms. Stewart. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 6, discussion and possible action to adopt a proposal TURFMA resolution number 2024-14, which authorizes funding for the Reno Park Ranger program and approve a joint funding agreement with the City of Reno, Nevada for the funding of Reno Park Rangers position. Pursuant to the agreement, TURFMA will contribute an initial amount of $117,000 for fiscal year 2024 to 2025, with a maximum possible contribution of $200,000, and will contribute a maximum amount of $200,000 for fiscal year 2025 to 2026. Possible action to approve TURFMA resolution number 2024-14 and the Park Rangers interlocal joint funding agreement as presented or with changes, or to give direction to staff. Mr. Walls.
Thank you very much. In April of 2022, the Board of Directors approved a joint funding agreement for the Reno Park Rangers program. The maximum contribution that was approved was $200,000. The intention was the TRFMA property along the Truckee River would be patrolled by the park rangers. That agreement, however, was never taken up for consideration or approved by the City of Reno. In just a few months ago, in May, the Board of Directors considered a proposed agreement with the City of Reno to fully fund 2 park rangers positions with the City of Reno with a cap of $250,000 annually. That agreement was not approved by the Board of Directors. Director Doer asked that we continue conversations about an alternative funding mechanism and that this be placed on the agenda again. After some discussions with City of Reno staff, It was requested that an agreement similar to the April 2022 agreement be presented for consideration, and the agreement before the board today is in response to that request. The agreement on the agenda here today is substantially similar to the 2022 agreement, but the amounts to be contributed are going to be higher because the number of positions is higher now. At the time in 2022, there were 2 park rangers. I believe there are currently 5, with I think the possibility of hiring a 6th here in the near future. Under the proposed agreement, TURFMA would provide funding to the city of Reno for this fiscal year, 24-25, and then in fiscal year 25-26 for 20% of the salaries and benefits of the Reno Park Rangers program. That agreement provides that the initial contribution will be about $117,000. That reflects the 20% of those 5 positions. It will be capped at $200,000 should they hire an additional position. In fiscal year 26, it will also be capped at $200,000. Under no circumstances can TURFMA's contribution constitute more than 20% of the salaries and benefits in either fiscal year. And the contribution may only be used for salaries and benefits. Any funds that are not expended by Reno that are paid are to be returned or to be credited to the coming year, if any. TURFMA will, under the agreement, grants permission for the park rangers to enter and patrol our property. They are committed to patrol the property at least 5 times per week and to submit an annual report showing the total amounts that have been spent. If jurisdiction or authority of the park rangers is changed so that they can't patrol or issue citations, then TURFMA can cancel and terminate the agreement. The park rangers will remain employees of the city of Reno, and the city of Reno will have exclusive control over them. There's an indemnification provision, and the city of Reno will indemnify TURFMA if there's any liability incurred as a result of the park rangers' actions. The agreement limits the contribution to 20% of the salaries and benefits in order to comply with NRS 377B and our infrastructure tax funds, and to limit those to the ongoing expenses of operation and maintenance of the Truckee River Flood Project. And the 20% was arrived at as a relative approximate percentage of the river frontage owned by TURFMA as compared to the total approximate river frontage that will be within the jurisdiction and will be patrolled by the Reno Park Rangers. Just as a mechanism to try to ensure that we comply with NRS 377B. So with that, I will take any questions.
Do you have any questions or comments for Mr. Walls? Ms. Dewar?
Yeah. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for continuing to work on this. I think it's really important that we continue these partnership efforts as we move forward with the flood project. Thanks for explaining about the 20%. The other question I had was where the cap of 200,000, why is that relevant? How do you get to that?
Because at some point, say if Reno, I mean, this is an extreme hypothetical, but if Reno were to hire 15 park rangers, the benefit for TURFMA would not increase proportionally with that. And so it was an effort to try to quantify the actual benefit that the flood project would receive.
Okay. And then is Mr. Uliat in the room? I don't know.
He
From the
is.
city of Reno? Oh, would he like to comment on this? Or?
Come on down.
For others, he's our Parks and Rec director.
Nathan Elliott, Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Reno. Yeah, happy to be here. Was pleased to continue to work with Executive Director Robison and Chief Counsel or General Counsel Wolves on this, and appreciate the board's consideration. This helps us get to a space where, as we talked about a few months ago, we can patrol on a 7-day basis and of the entire river, and going from what the original agreement had at 3 visitations, we think 5 at least gives us a chance to maintain some consistency on the property and hopefully not let footholds get get in place so that encampments can start there. So excited for the opportunity and appreciate the consideration.
Okay, thank you, Nathan.
Anything
Okay.
else, Ms. Stewart?
No?
Mr. Lawson?
How much, how many miles of property does the flood board own? Pardon me.
Oh, go ahead.
When we did this initial calculation, we own about 1.2 miles along the south bank where we own that property. And then we compared that with the total number of miles that Reno actually patrols in their parks and open areas.
So at 20% of 5 people, that's 80 hours a week. Are we gonna get 80 hours worth of service on 1.2 miles?
No, they're going to patrol I think they said 5 times a week, they'll probably have 2 people, it's probably about an hour each time. So at most, it would be 15 to 20 hours.
Just doing the math, that's about $1,000 an hour. I mean, it seems overstated to me. I mean, and do these people have any policing powers? Can they ask people to leave? Do they have any enforcement of it? Do they have to call the police then to come and get involved? So, I mean, to me, this is a waste of taxpayer dollars. Simple.
Ms. Stewart?
Yeah, thank you. I think Mr. Lawson brings up some good points, but I also think that one thing that's missing, we own maybe 1.2 miles, the flood project does, in a linear way, but it's not like the staff will be patrolling 1 inch or even 1 foot along that linear way. It's really an aerial measurement. So the land that the flood project owns is many, many acres. And I don't think that the work that the staff will do is going to be restricted just to the edge of the water. I think it's going to extend hundreds of feet into the land. So I haven't done any calculations, but I would imagine that that is, even if you extended it 3 feet in, now you're looking at 3 miles worth of stuff. And if you extended it 100 feet from the bank, you can do the math. In other words, I think it's a misnomer to just think about a lineal length of area. It's actually an area. And I think that while the encampments and trash might be along the first foot, I think most of them extend some distance beyond the edge of the river. There's an embankment to be climbed there. And so I think all of that has to be taken into consideration. It's not just a lineal measurement, in my opinion. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ms. Stewart. Any other questions or comments? Don't see anyone. Ms. Andrilla?
Thank you. I just was wondering if you could answer the question that Mayor Lawson posed in terms of authority. I was wondering that too, in terms of enforcement.
It's my understanding that the park rangers have the authority to issue citations for violations of Reno code, for example, under their camping ordinance. They do not have general police authority. Mr. Uliak can correct me if I'm wrong here, but they do not have general police powers. And so if any laws were broken and if people needed to be removed from the property, the police would need to be called.
May I have a follow-up, please? But no matter who was doing it to a certain extent, unless it was law enforcement themselves, one would have to call that jurisdiction. Is that a correct assessment?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from anyone?
I just have one
Yeah, Ms.
follow-up.
Stewart.
Yeah, thank you. I think this point has been made previously, but I think it's really important to understand that a lot of stuff that is found on the flood project lands is actually entrained in the water and comes from upstream. And so we're really cleaning up a lot of things that are floating down, getting caught on the property, and whether it's trash or logs or any other kind of debris. And especially when there's flooding, obviously it overtops the banks, but the flooding instance is relatively minor as compared to the day to day. And I just think getting making sure that all the work that Green Vibe is doing and cleaning up the property, George said earlier that he's never seen it look so good. So I think the idea is to ensure that we can maintain this state. And if we don't do anything, then we're going to be involved in periodic cleanups, as we have been, maybe once or twice a year, which allows all the trash and all the people to build up. And then it's a big, very expensive undertaking. In fact, George documented one of the cleanups alone cost $100,000, and that was a one-time effort. And so I think we just said that this year's far less than 200,000. I think it was 117, George said. So I think that bang for the buck, it's much better to prevent this kind of buildup than to continue to address it in an episodic fashion. And so taking into consideration that the areas will be cleaned upstream as well with our park staff, and that the downstream effect will be lessened, and that that property will remain in good shape, I think it's well worth it. So thanks.
Thanks, Mr.
And Mr. Chairman, Alexis here.
Yep.
How I see this is a grant. It's like we are dipping our toes into a new thing we've never done as a flood project. I think the staff have been super judicious, and I think it's incumbent on the city of Reno to show the results. I'm prepared to support this today, and I'd also like to see the city of Sparks come in with a proposal as well, because I think this is a regional effort. I'll tell you, the Washoe County, I think I've already told this board that Washoe County will be supporting $250,000 for the River Rangers, and I see that as a grant as well, as a regional effort on the river. And so it's legal. It's, to me, a nominal use of funds for the large budget that we have at TURFMA, and I think it's the right move for our community moving forward, and I think the staff have done a really good job to just keep the request in check, and I feel comfortable, and I think that we should just ask for our partners to show that they are worth the grant funds, and if they're not, and we can say in this motion what our expectations are, if that is a concern from this board. But I'll tell you, I've seen the River Rangers in action when I've been downtown Reno, and it's been very impressive, and they just need more support, and this meets the mission of our board. And again, I want to support, and I look forward to holding our grantees responsible for the taxpayer money. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Hill. Anyone else on Zoom or?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
if I may.
Mr. Martinez.
Thanks so much. I appreciate all the comments and the due diligence that has been done to get us up to this point, both in conversations from the Truckee River Flood Management Authority Board and the City of Reno Parks and Rec. I know Director Ulia has been very adamant and making sure that we do what we need to get the information to get to this point. And I understand some of the concerns about using the funds in this way, but similar to what has already been said, I think instead of addressing some of the concerns that we see along the river and sort of these large, costly, one-time things, having consistent presence and rangers out there 5 to 7 days a week to be able to patrol the areas to keep it in a better state will allow not just Green Vibes efforts, but everybody's efforts to move forward and continue to enjoy the river. I know that within the city, we're trying to improve the trail along the river, and I know that will help with this as well. And so I appreciate seeing this sort of funding as a grant and making sure that the city is providing what TURFMA needs to feel okay with this decision to spend the money in this way. I know that the park rangers do the best that they can to be able to help folks navigate the river, get to places, clean up areas, and document what's going on and prevent any of the issues moving downstream or accumulating, as has been mentioned already. So I just wanted to echo some of those thoughts and looking forward to this collaboration coming to fruition. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Mr. Robeson, I have a question. Would it be possible, I guess, talking about green vibes, is that something that, if we weren't to go with the River Rangers, are we able to use green vibes to provide, yeah.
We are currently using Green Vibe that way. They are actually, we have no homeless people on the river right now. It is completely cleaned up right now. The example that Councilperson Dorr gave was after COVID, when we had 180 people on the property and they were not cleaning up because of COVID. They did not want to sweep or do anything and disrupt people while they had COVID. So we had over 100 tents out there at that time because the police were not going to go out there because of COVID. So that is a special case. At this point, it is completely, there are people that try to come in and they do things, but we have bolstered our fencing. We have bolstered our no trespassing signs. Green Vibe, when they're out there, they do tell people to leave. We tell people to leave. It is pretty much, there may be one person sometimes and then they get kicked off. That's how it's been ever since that last cleanup. So that's where we're at now. That's the current state of where we're at.
And Mr. Robeson, how much are we paying Green Vibes, I guess, to provide that? Do you know that number?
Yeah, I do. It's $48,000, but that's not just for patrolling. That is for vegetation management and for other tasks to try to manage the land. We're trying to improve the vegetative state of the land and get it ready for when we do construction on it in the future and make it into a park. So there's more to it than just that. That's a part of what they do. But like this thing tomorrow where they'll be out there cleaning, that's all volunteer. They're not charging us a dime for that. We are providing a garbage bin and a porta potty. But other than that, we're not paying anything for that.
Thank you, Mr. Robeson. Ms. Andrella?
Yeah.
Actually, to Chair Abbott's question, I had a question about just understanding if there's an opportunity to actually bid on this project in terms of giving an opportunity for whether it be Green Vibe or the Park Rangers or whoever it is. I'm not sure. That's why I was trying to understand the distinction between the Park Rangers authority and then maybe others' authority. And it sounds to me that whether it's the Park Rangers or others, they would also be under the guidelines of having to contact, for instance, law enforcement or what have you. The clarification that I'm now wanting is when you use the word citations, I would imagine that others would not have that opportunity. And so if I could just understand what citations mean, because I don't think, as Park Rangers, it sounds like they have that additional authority that another body would not.
That's correct. The park rangers would have that authority. Green Vibe, as just a contractor and as general citizens, cannot issue citations. I guess the example that most people are familiar with is a parking ticket is a citation. And so you basically, they would be getting a ticket for camping, and there is a fine associated with that.
I think that's an important distinction. I'm always, trying to promote opportunities for everyone to have an equal opportunity to bid on projects, but that is a distinction that makes it unique. So I too am going to support this project with the caveat of I would like to actually ask that we have regular, whether it be quarterly updates, just to have a better understanding as we enter into this. How things are going, what those citations look like. Just really a report and update opportunity would be helpful. Thank you.
Ms. Dewar, I saw your hand up.
Just a brief follow-up to what George had mentioned. He told us that the big development of trash and camping was COVID. And COVID went several years. But he also just said that Green Vibe is back out there. He portrayed that the fence is fixed and it's all good and it's a perfect, pristine condition. And yet he just said, I just wanted to understand this, that Green Vibe was back out there. So is there more trash or more people or what is, if it's all good and there's no need, then why are they back?
Yeah, Mr. Robeson.
Okay, the reason they're out there is residual trash that, some of it's from even when there was COVID. And they're trying to find this trash and dig it out and get it out of there instead of having it become part of the river during a major flood. So it's kind of like getting the last pieces of trash out of there and making it even more pristine than it is. What I did say is it has never looked so good since I've been director.
Right.
And it's always been in a degraded state, and it's always had problems. Even before I was director, the basketball court over there at Bristlecone had a fire. There was homeless people in the Bristlecone facility at times. There were people in the well house that we tore down. So it's always been a problem, but lately, the last several months, it has not been a problem because we have had a lot of presence out there because they're doing vegetation management and other things. We've also put cows out in an area that they haven't been before, and that's even more activity. So the way that we try to manage this problem is putting activity out there because it seems like people do not like to do drugs and camping and all this other stuff when there's all these other activities going on. So that's how we have been controlling this. Right now, it is kind of under control. I mean, it's, like I said, there's no homeless encampments out there as far as I know today. And there was one and it's gone. And every now and then one will come up, and that will probably continue whether we have patrols or not. So there is, having 5 patrols is certainly better than having no patrols than what we have now.
Okay.
The question that you guys can ask yourself is it 100 and whatever thousand better or 200,000 better than what we have now? That's really the real question.
So one thing is the difference between the summer and the winter. So you just mentioned there's cows out, Green Vibe is doing cleaning, but I don't know that that will continue into the, let's say, the middle of winter or the 3 or 4 or 5 months of cold weather. Whereas I think our rangers are year round. So at least it will provide a continuous level of assessment and people being out there on a daily basis, which is episodic, I think, now. My understanding is that Green Vibe is primarily a nonprofit, and maybe they also have, a for-profit arm or something. I'm not really sure. I was a little unclear whether you're paying them or they're doing this on a volunteer basis.
They are a 5013C is my understanding. They are doing things. They're taking at-cost things to do vegetation management, and we are reimbursing them.
Okay,
There
so
is
you
one
pay for some-
they're a nonprofit organization.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Lawson?
So if you hire the river rangers, will you still employ Green Vibes? 'Cause
Yeah,
they're obviously not going to do vegetation management,
correct.
so you would still hire Green Vibe to do the
Well, that we're
vegetation.
currently under contract with them.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments?
I have 2 clarifying questions, if I may.
Of course, Mr. Martinez.
Yeah, Mr. Robeson, how often is the contract with the city of Reno? How often would we see that as a board, or is this a one-time thing?
The contract is for 2 years, so you wouldn't see this for 2 years if it's passed.
But we do have the ability, as board member Andriola asked, to have quarterly updates from the Parks and Rec department from the city of Reno.
She did. We could arrange whatever we want for reporting, but yes.
Okay, and then the second question is, how long is the contract with Green Vibe?
The contract with Green Vibe, I am not,
It's one,
it's 1 year.
it's 1 year.
Okay, do you know when it started?
I don't.
I believe that was June 1st.
June 1st. Okay, just so we can keep track of that. Thank you so much.
Anyone else? Are we looking for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a
Yeah.
motion,
Okay.
and I'll add in quarterly reporting to go along with the contract.
Sounds like a motion by Ms. Stewart. Can I get a second?
Yep,
Mr. Martinez?
yep, I'll second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. We'll open it up for public comment before we take a vote. I don't see anyone here. I'm assuming Zoom. I don't see any hands up either. Bring it back to us. Any final questions or comments before we ask for a vote? I don't see any. We were looking, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Passes 5-1, I believe. Mr. Lawson in the nay vote. Item 7, presentation, discussion of the status of the Riverside Drive flood wall and berm design project in Reno, including the estimated costs, protection levels, and the construction impacts of the various design alternatives. Mr. Robeson.
Okay, so can you bring up the PowerPoint, Marty? Okay, next slide, please.
Want to share the screen?
Okay, so this is, we have been working with City of Reno staff, the Carson Tahoe Water Conservancy District, RTC, and we earlier had hired a consultant to look at the new modeling that we have to see how high flood walls might need to be, and I presented that earlier this year. This is a follow-up. This is being funded by the Carson Truckee Water Conservancy District. This is an initial design with an alternatives analysis of different ways to approach dealing with a need. And so next slide, please. So why are we even doing this? The reason why is that Reno is, ever since been director, has been dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers and with them saying, you need to meet your contractual obligation to contain the flow up to 14,000 CFS. Secondly, in the area around Booth Street and down to Arlington, there are breakouts at flows lower than 14,000 CFS, which violates that agreement and also causes flood damage and nuisance at lower flood flows. And the Corps has been insistent through the Conservancy District that they need to find a solution, and they're starting to say things like, we'll hold up things because you didn't do, you don't have this agreement in check. So we are trying to work with our partners, which is the City of Reno, which is RTC and others, to come up with a solution on this to figure out how to contain the 14,000 CFS. Next slide, please. So we have a history here. In 2013 and 14, TURFMA commissioned a fairly intensive design that would have contained the 100-year flow, which is 20,700-ish CFS, which is about 6,000 CFS more. And the plan called for actually taking out half of Riverside, putting in a giant berm, and a bunch of other things. When I first took my job, I got several community complaints about this, and I went down there and reviewed it myself, and I was like, this just doesn't work, and if we just want to do the 14,000 CFS, we can probably do that with something much less, and I presented that to the board in 2020. In 2022, we did a study trying to figure out what the role of the Booth Street Bridge was, and we found that the bridge doesn't have that much impact on things, and it's really not worth taking out the bridge to try to get maybe a half a foot to a foot of drop on the water there. In earlier this year, in late 2023, we did a study with the new modeling to figure out how high the wall would need to be to contain 14,000 CFS and meet the requirements of the MARTIS agreement. I did that on my contractual money. It was under the limits, and so we just did it to find that out. Now, the Carson-Truckee Water Conservancy District did a design exercise with alternatives analysis, and that's what I want to talk about today. They have given me permission to discuss this with you so that you are fully informed of what's going on between these partners. And I want to say this too, this is not part of the greater Meadows Flood Project where we work from Highway 395 to Vista Narrows, where we are putting out designs and trying to get cost estimates and everything else. That is the core of what we're doing, because when you deal with that particular area river, the benefit is in the billions of dollars of flood damage reduction, and it far outweighs the cost of the project. So the benefit cost ratio in that area is very high. Here, it's not as high, and the only way we'd really want to work on this is in a cooperative fashion in a targeted project, because one of our cooperators really wants to get this done. In this case, we have two, the Conservancy District and the City of Reno really want to get something done. Next slide, please. So the February flood wall study, the takeaways were that you could probably do, you could have a flood wall upstream of Booth Street could be as small as 5 feet, 4.5 feet, and contain the 14,000 CFS. Below there, you could get by with very little flood wall, like a foot or two, along the pathway, so there'd be very little disturbance and very little loss of trees and other impacts. So it'd be a very fast project and a very low impact project, and we even discussed with the Conservancy District, this was their idea that this could probably be downstream of Booth Street, could be done as a maintenance activity and really have no permitting. In the normal senses of permitting with the Corps. Next slide, please. So now we come to this study with the Water Conservancy District. This was done by JUB engineers. They created 3 alternatives. One was alternative A, which was the minimal design to contain 14,000 CFS with a 1-foot freeboard. So it prevents the breakouts up to that and even beyond 14,000 CFS. And then the alternative B was a little bit more protective. It was in between the two, and it allowed for more of a flood wall along the pathway, so that you could have a bench, perhaps with this new work that we're doing on the flood wall itself. That was kind of an idea, and it had a little more. It was slightly more protective. And then alternative C was to try to contain the 100-year flood with a flood wall, which we'll see in a minute has really high flood walls in places. So next slide, please. So basically, when they did this thing, you have the report, although it is kind of hard to read and understand. So I'm going to try to break it down in a more understandable way here. And there really are differences in how the treatments occur by zones. So upstream of Booth Street, all 3 require a flood wall of some sort. The flood wall from from alternative A is on the order, is not very high. It's about 7 feet maximum. But the alternative C, it becomes 15 feet. And so you would have a 15-foot wall between those apartments and the river. And I am just based on talking to community people, that would not go over very well. And it would also be very hard to fit. So I'm going to talk about these alternatives in a minute, but right there, you're already seeing some problems. And that's the area in red. In the area in green next door, Alternative A would actually have a berm, not a wall, and it's very low impact and probably no loss of trees or maybe a tree or two. While B and C would have walls and they would take out some trees, especially alternative C would take out dozens of trees in that section, in the green section. The yellow section, same thing. Alternative A, there is actually no treatment necessary because the ground is caught up to the 14,000 CFS. So you just have the existing trail. Maybe you enhance that slightly, widen it or something like that, make it slightly higher, but no real treatment is needed. But with B and C, you'd still have a wall and there would be some trees that would be taken out because of the construction of a flood wall. And I'll show why that's the case here in a second. And then finally, the last area there in yellow, there is an existing flood wall in this area, and A and B would have no treatment except maybe some fortification of the existing wall, while C would replace and raise that wall to a 6-foot wall. So that's the difference. Each of these alternatives does different things and has different levels of protection. One has a 14,000 plus level of protection. One has probably about a 17,000 CFS level of protection. And the other one protects to the full 100-year with 3 feet of freeboard and meets insurance requirements as a full-on project. So you get that insurance reduction, although other parts of the Reno project do not have that. So it would be kind of a difference than what was done in other places. Next slide, please. Alternative A, this is the berm idea that the consultant came up with, and it does have very little impact. It's just putting a berm in, putting a sidewalk in on the berm, redoing that, and very little impact around that, so it wouldn't take out trees around the berm. You could dodge the trees with this thing. And that's how alternative A really is. Once you get downstream of Booth Street, there's some berm and then there's some no treatment. Next slide, please. The other way is there's flood wall, and above Booth Street, everywhere needs a flood wall. This is not necessarily the final design or anything. This is a typical of what a flood wall might look like. And the problem with the flood wall is you look at that thing, based on the height of that flood wall, at the bottom down there, you can see a long area of concrete, a horizontal area. That area would have to be dug up. And in doing that, you would interfere with a lot of roots of a lot of trees. So it would kill quite a bit of trees. And back in 2013 and 14, the reason why that TURFMA proposed a levee out in the middle of the street was to protect those trees. They literally just went to another levee and they went into the street rather than take out all those trees. That's what led them to that. Next slide, please. So this slide's a little busy, but it's the flood wall heights needed under different alternatives. And the maximum height upstream of Booth Street, and this is what this slide is in the background, that picture is an aerial photo upstream of Booth Street where those 2 red lines are. In that area, the highest it gets is 7 feet with alternative A. With alternative B, it goes up to 8.5 feet. With alternative C, it goes up to 15 feet in that area. The other thing is there is continuous wall with alternative C all the way down to Arlington, with a minimum wall height of 6 feet everywhere. So that's what would happen. That's what it takes to contain the 100-year flood with freeboard. So that's the difference between these. Alternative B is in between. There's some flood wall along the path, and it varies, but in most cases it's lower and it's easier to navigate, and it would have a smaller impact than alternative C. So next slide, please. So I want to make this very clear about what this might look like in real life. Like if we were walking along there, and this is something you don't see in the report. It's hard to visualize this. So this is a spot where the flood wall begins, the existing flood wall begins. In alternative A, there would be no treatment in this area because it's already high enough. With alternative B, there would be a 3.5-foot wall to the existing wall. So like on the right side of this slide, there would be a low wall along there. It would probably pop up about 2 feet above the walk there. And then alternative C, there would be a 6-foot wall that would be popping up about 4 feet, and that wall would be going the whole way, that the existing wall would be taken out and redone with a 6-foot wall. So that's a given spot. A lot of you have been there and walked there, but that is what it would look like if you try to do alternative C. There would be a 6-foot wall there, and you would not actually be able to see the river from this vantage point. Next slide, please. Okay, this is another spot where there's the existing flood wall. With alternative C, there'd be a new 6-foot wall. There would be no changes with A and B, although maybe some of these areas where there's walkways, you might put a small berm in there so that that doesn't become a break point with water coming through. Minor stuff there. But with the other one, you would be redoing the wall. Next slide, please. Oops. Okay, this is at kind of the end of the flood wall, way down by Arlington. There would still be a continuous 6-foot wall going along there with alternative C. Next slide. And finally, this is up just downstream of Booth Street before the Keystone Bridge. And alternative A would have a berm and likely would have very few, if any, trees taken out. It would just be lifted up about 1.5 feet from where it is now. It might be widened somewhat. Alternative B, there would be the 5-foot wall. It would be sticking out about 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet. We could put some benching on that in that area. Alternative C, it would be a 7-foot wall in that area. So it'd be sticking up about 5 feet high above there, and most of the trees would be coming out. Next slide. So utility interference is something that they looked at with the different alternatives. And just to give the totals, with utility crossings, the alternative A interferes with about 7 utility lines, and mostly upstream of Booth Street. Alternative B, 10, and alternative C, 15, but there are others that are some water and gas lines that might be interfered with on top of that. So there is about at least double the utility interference with alternative C. Next slide, please. The cost of this is, and the protection levels are given in this slide. This is also in the report. There is higher freeboard with the 20,700 protection and alternative C as well to meet insurance requirements. But you can see it goes from 2 million to 5 million to 13, almost 14 million with the costs here. And this is really the crux of the study, looking at these 3 alternatives, looking at what they might cost. They did a detailed breakdown of this based on unit cost analysis. That's the lowest level of cost analysis, but it is the first level of cost analysis ever done on this since 2013, which was a much bigger project in that case. Next slide, please. So that leaves me with questions. Because of a lot of these things with alternative C, the people on the committee, I don't want to speak for them, but there was a general consensus that probably alternative C wasn't a good idea. However, there was some appetite for alternative A and alternative B, or maybe a hybrid between them. And the idea here is that if the Corps wants this bad enough and they say, look, we don't require permitting downstream of Booth Street, and if we can get this done fairly light on the permitting upstream of Booth Street, this could be a possibility of a targeted cooperative project that we would participate in. But that's totally up to this board if they want to work on this sort of thing and try to solve this sort of a flood problem. I think that's what we're here for, but it isn't part of our core flood program. So any questions on this?
Awesome, thank you, sir. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Ms. Hill, I think.
Hi, it's Alexis.
Yep.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And I'm assuming that Carrie Kosky is in the room, is she?
She's not in the room. She might be on Zoom.
Oh,
I think
okay.
she's
I
off,
was-
but I think it's Trina's in the room or on Zoom.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Trina's.
well, I just have a few comments, and I'd like to hear from the city of Reno if it's appropriate, if the chairman would allow me to ask for that perspective. But
Absolutely.
if not, then I have a few comments. Okay. You know, George and I talked about this before, and I know we disagree, but I still think closing down Riverside is the right thing to do and creating more green space there, especially because it creates more flood protection and insurance protection for that community. But I understand if the city of Reno doesn't want to do that, and I don't get to make that call, which is totally fine. I would push on that idea of alternative B, more protection, and so that's my only question. And also, you know, this idea of creating more green space for our community, that would happen if you close the Riverside Drive and put the wall there. But I understand we've moved past that, and but I wanted to get that on the record that that's something that was, I think, truly visionary and something that, you know, should, you know, be considered, unless understanding the city of Reno just doesn't want to see that happen. But I'm a fan of alternative B, and if it needs to be a hybrid, then that's okay too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, thank you. Ms. Magoon, did you want to add anything? I saw you're live now.
Sorry, thank you. Carrie is off on vacation today. I do know that she's working with RTC on roadway connectivity and bicycle connectivity in that area. I apologize, I'm sick, so it's a little bit difficult to talk right now. But so I know she's working on some studies in that area. So I can't comment at this point on full removal of Riverside Drive. I'm not sure that there's that has been fully vetted and studied.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. Any other, Ms. Dewar?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to comment that I appreciate George working with and I always get the name wrong. It's the Carson Truckee group. What is the name of the group?
Water Conservancy District.
But is it Carson Truckee?
Yes.
Okay. Carson Truckee Water Conservancy District. I was a little confused when you mentioned the Corps in there, but they're a member of that conservancy district as a contributing agency. Is that right?
They have, under the MARTIS agreement, obligations to make sure that the river contains water that it contains and things like that under that agreement. And the Carson Truckee Water Conservancy District is the vehicle that is used to do that, and they fund that. They fund that group.
A question, you made a comment, and I'm not sure I heard it right. You said something about, we're happy to participate in solving this, but it's not part of our flood program, is what I wrote down. And I was confused by that because you mentioned, when you gave your history, you mentioned something about 2020. There was a slide at the beginning, and you said something about it was part of the program, and then we added it back into the flood project map, to my understanding, into the 377B plan. So I'm not sure about the distinction you're trying to make. Could you explain that?
It is not part of the Meadows Flood Project. The Meadows Flood Project has probably, on costs going forward, a cost-benefit ratio of something like 7 to 1. This probably would not even make 1. But if other entities are very interested in this and it's a flooding issue, we want to be in there and cooperate with them and help any way we can.
Okay.
And
but
that's what
is it-
we've been doing.
Okay. Well, I understand that different parts of the project, even within a segment, have different cost benefit ratios, right? Is that right?
Definitely.
Okay. So I guess my question is that the whole cost benefit ratio and the way the Corps did it, We're not working with the Corps anymore. They have a black box model that I personally spent a lot of time delving into to understand how they calculate their cost benefit. And they calculated in that the first foot of damage creates a lot of benefit, and the second through 10th foot of flooding creates very little damage, because once you've wetted a wall, call it a foot, you have to replace the wall, whether it's wetted 2 feet or 3 feet or 4 feet. And so it's a model that is based on a flat terrain, more like Sacramento, and not a basin like we live in. And it really doesn't work for mountain towns like us because it discounts the damages. But besides all that, what I don't understand is why we would be mentioning anything about the cost benefit ratio right now. I mean, are you saying it's at least 1-to-1 when you say the other parts are 7-to-1? Are you saying there's at least some benefit?
First of all, the cost benefit is also based on a UNR study in 2018 that isn't the Corps. And secondly, areas that are flat typically get more damage because the water can spread out and cause damage out further because the area is too low to the river. For instance, you can get way far away from the river in some of the Sparks area and have 6 feet of water depth out in the industrial area. So that's why it's so damaging. If you damage up to 6 feet on a wall, you may have to replace the whole building down to the foundation. So that's very high cost. And the idea of using cost-benefit ratios, we want to understand where to prioritize. We do not have enough money to do all these projects.
Sure.
So that's something that I think we have to make sure that we always have in front of us, that we do not have enough money to do all these projects. We are working on grants. We are working on revolving funds so that we can do this project as rapidly as possible. And we want to prioritize the areas where there is the most damage and where our actions will do the most good. And the way to do that is to figure that out with cost-benefit ratio, whether it's the Corps or somebody else's method.
But you mentioned that, I mean, right at the beginning of your conversation, you made an argument that the flood project should be involved because you said, separate and apart from all of these other things, we do have an agreement, the Martis agreement. And under that, you're saying that we're being put under a lot of pressure. In other words, it may not be because of a cost benefit ratio. It is due to this legal agreement that we are participating in from many, many decades ago. And you're saying that they are starting to talk about holding up other parts of our project. So regardless of cost benefit ratio and other things, you're saying, at least that's what I heard you say, is that it's important to do this. Is that what you are saying?
I am saying when other entities need our help, like the city of Reno or the Carson-Truckee Water Conservation District, I think we should be cooperating with them in flood projects. And we spent money on studies, and we've been cooperating in a small subcommittee, and we've been doing everything we can to make sure that we meet that agreement somehow. That's, to me, that's important too. But what I was trying to say is you were discounting the use of benefit cost ratio, and I'm saying that is a very good way to prioritize things overall.
Well, let's not get confused. I'm not trying to discount it. I just wasn't sure of its relevance in this particular project. It seemed like the driver was not cost-benefit analysis, but rather these other things that you're mentioning, like agreements and holding up other projects or not permitting them, several of our bridge projects. That's what I was hearing you say. I was just seeking clarification. So my question, I guess, is, I want to make sure that we're kind of not, it sounds like we're in, but is it we're in to a degree? Or are we making it, let me just make sure I understand. Is this or is this not in the 377B plan?
Some months ago, this is General Counsel Michael Walls. Several months ago, we amended the 377B plan to allow for levees and flood walls.
In this area?
Between Arlington and 1,000, from Arlington to 1,000 feet above the Booth Street Bridge.
Okay, so it is is what you're saying.
It's in the plan, yes.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I'm with Member Hill. I think, probably a hybrid of A and B is probably a good approach to addressing this project. And you said, George, the committee, and I'm not sure who's on this particular committee, if we're talking about the TAC or some other committee that's associated with the Truckee Carson Water Water Conservancy District. But it sounds like we should move forward with the next step of planning. I do want to mention that in the city of Reno, the standard width of sidewalks is 5 feet. That's in a neighborhood, anybody's neighborhood, every neighborhood. The standard is 5 feet. This is a part of a parkway, and I think that we should not restrict ourselves to a 5-foot sidewalk in advance. I think that in parkways and parks, we try to make wider sidewalks. So I just want to put that on the table. I am not saying how wide I believe it should be. I don't think I need to weigh in on that. I'm just saying that this isn't a typical street with 2 5-foot sidewalks on either side of the street. This may be 1 10-foot sidewalk or 1 8-foot sidewalk. But whatever it is, we should leave that question open until we get there. That's my only
Just to
comment
clarify,
about
that question is still open. We're not,
Okay.
those were conceptual designs
Okay.
for an alternative study. They're not the final designs or even the 60% design or anything like that.
Okay.
I don't think that there was any consensus about sidewalk width at this point.
Okay, I thought I heard you say something. And you also mentioned a berm, but then you also, with the hybrid plan, I think mentioned a berm and a flood wall. And that makes sense to me. I'm not sure. I've seen various designs for, environmentally kind of appropriate berms, similar to what we did at Reno Sparks Indian Colony, or maybe there's a different version. But anyway, I'm glad that you're looking at a variety of alternatives, and I'll just leave it there.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Do we have any other questions or comments on this item? I don't see anyone here. I don't see any hands up. I don't think there's a recommended, or,
This is
right,
informational.
it's informational.
What would be a next step, I guess?
The Conservancy the ball is in their court. They're looking at further design. At some point, they would probably, I think they're going to come to us and ask this group, I won't call them a committee, I'll call them a group. And it's like I'm there, some people from Reno are there, RTC is there sometimes, the Conservancy District there is sometimes. We're talking about, like, we would fund this if it's a level of design that's reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's up to this board, really. I mean,
But
it's
you'll bring something to us to vote on.
at the
some point.
appropriate time when we have it ready to go.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Thanks, Ms. Stewart. Any other questions, comments before we close it? I don't see any. And we'll go to item 8, public comment. Any final public comment? I don't see anyone here either. Mr. Beadard, I saw you move a little bit, though. Okay, just checking. Item 9. Board.
He's moving out
Board
of the
member
room.
comments, request, future agenda items. Does anyone have anything? Anyone on Zoom? I don't see any. We will adjourn today at 10:23. Have a great weekend. Bam.